About Mozilla. Mike Schroepfer is the VP Engineering of Mozilla, and he actually was recently elected as one of the top 50 most important people on web. So let me quote the comments from PC World. In the ongoing war, in the ongoing browser war, Mike Schroepfer is the 5-star general who leads a massive but decentralized open source army of staff and volunteer engineers. Its mission is to improve what is already the best web browser on the planet, Firefox. The open source nature of Firefox permits a faster development cycle to incorporate new features and security fixes. The proof of its success is the Internet Explorer 7's adoption of Firefox features such as tabbed browsing. So now let's have Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for that very nice introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for braving the rain to come here, listen to me talk a little bit. I encourage you to think about questions as I'm talking, and we'll write them down, and we'll do a great Q&A at the end. How many people here are familiar with Mozilla? How many people know what Mozilla is? All right, tell your friends. So how many people here know what Firefox is? How many of you use Firefox? Don't lie, it's okay. Okay, wow. Okay, good stuff. So you already know a lot of this in terms of what Mozilla is. Mozilla really is a global group of organizations around the world. It's organizations and people together under one common mission, and that's to promote choice and innovation on the net. Those are really big terms and really lofty goals. So what does it really mean? When we say choice, we mean that you should be able to get to the services you want on the net from your choice of platforms, devices, client software, time and place, to be able to do so in a secure and open manner without having to worry about viruses and Trojans and all the rest of it. When we say innovation, what we mean is the web should be an amazing place to develop applications and to do creative things online. I think Google's been a big pioneer here, things like Google Maps and Gmail, really pushing the limits of what you can do on the web. And I think with Firefox, what we're trying to do is provide the best platform possible to build these sort of applications. And of course, we're known best for to being the maker of both Firefox and the Thunderbird email client. Of course. So Mozilla has been working on what we call the Mozilla platform for almost 10 years now. And this is a rough diagram of what the different components are in the Mozilla platform. This is a rich application development platform that can be used to build applications like Firefox, like Thunderbird. Dozens to hundreds of other applications around the world are built on this platform today. It includes everything from a JavaScript interpreter to recently an embedded database engine, to a rich graphics layer, to a toolkit for building user interfaces, again, cross-platform, to more mundane things like updating your application automatically or installing and managing extensions. And it's on top of this rich internet platform that's all open and available for you to use and any other project you want to do. We build several applications, the most well-known of which, of course, are Firefox and Thunderbird. So Firefox. Firefox has been an amazing success. Firefox launched as a 1.0 version at the end of 2004, and since then, it's gone to almost 100 million users worldwide. It's one of the most successful open source projects on the planet. It's one of the few open source projects that's really broken into the mainstream. So this is people who are non-technical, who've heard from friends of friends that Firefox is a great thing, and so they go ahead and they go to the website, they download it, and install it. There's over 2,500 community-developed extensions. So these are add-ons that you can use to customize Firefox, to have it integrate with your website, to brand it and theme it to your favorite World Cup team or country, whatever you may want to do. There's over 2,500 of those currently developed. We estimate about 16% worldwide market share. I'm going to dive into that a little bit. This is a French company that does web analytics called ZityMonitor, and this is one form of web statistics. So this is Firefox market share worldwide. Now, I'll warn you that whenever someone quotes you web statistics, to take them with a grain of salt. They're all imperfect in some form or of the other. They all have some problem with the samples. But what's interesting to me about this is how it indicates the relative penetration of Firefox in different countries. As you can see, extremely strong in Europe, extremely strong in Australia, relatively strong in the US, and unfortunately not as strong in Asia. And that number in Europe is actually a little deceiving because there's a couple of countries that are very low and many countries that are very high. So there's several countries in Europe where there's over 30 or 40% market share. If you go and visit those countries, the question we'll most often get is, you know, now that you've beaten Microsoft on the desktop, what's Mozilla going to do next, right? Which is not something you hear in most other countries. And the amazing thing is Firefox ships in 41 languages right now, and we add about 4 languages every couple of releases. And these are all community-developed languages. So each one of these is someone in one of these countries who decided that they wanted a version of Firefox, whether it be Chinese or Arabic or Gaelic or Estonian. They wanted a version of Firefox that they could use, and they went ahead and got involved and participated in the project. And we've got tens to hundreds more queued up and ready to go. And I think if you take a look at who's using Firefox, so this is not by country, this is by which version of Firefox they're using. So that's 53% are using some version of the English version of Firefox. There's a British English and American English version of Firefox. As you can see, Chinese is only at 1%. So for the folks here, do you use the Chinese version of Firefox or the English version? English. Okay. Why? It's what? It's more easy to get. Okay. So this probably explains, I think there's a lot more of you that use Firefox here than that 1% would indicate. I've met a lot of people who say they use the English version and don't even bother with the Chinese localized version. It's pretty easy enough to use. It doesn't really matter whether you can read the menus. But this is something we need your help with. And one of the things, the reasons I'm here this week is because we've just started a Mozilla China effort headed by Li Gong, who will be running a Mozilla office here and helping to really improve the Mozilla community to both promote Firefox and to make sure that the localizations work well and people are aware. So for those of you who use Firefox, how did you hear about it? How did you find out about Firefox? How do you know about Firefox? On the internet. Okay. Have you told your friends? Good. Okay. Right answer. All right. So, and just one more thing on market share. This is a different way of looking at market share. This is the top 20 countries in the world by number of users online. As you can see, the US is about 211 million users. China is now at 137 million and growing, probably soon to overtake the US, and then on down. And you can see in the yellow there is the relative percentage of Firefox in each of those markets. Again, kind of gives you a sense of where the opportunity is. And I think there's plenty of room for growth in China. I think the other thing is, the rest of the world bar is one of the areas of fastest growth for Firefox. In that graph of languages, it's the other category. The languages that aren't there are the ones that we're seeing the fastest adoption, where people are just hearing about Firefox for the first time. So if all of you guys use Firefox, I won't bore you with what you already know, which is some of the great features of Firefox. I think, you know, what made Firefox 1.0 popular was it was really innovative. It introduced really popularized tab browsing, had pop-up blocking, built-in integrated search. What we've been trying to do with each release of Firefox is improve each of those features. Make tab browsing better through session restore to save your tabs if you crash, undo close tab. We've added search suggestions, so if you type in the search box, it'll automatically look up the search results for you. All of these things to really improve the Firefox product. But I think, how many of you downloaded Firefox because you thought it was more secure? Not very many. Okay. How many of you just thought it was better and you liked the tab browsing and wanted to try it? Okay. So one of the big things we spend a lot of time on in Firefox is security. As you know, the web is a huge vector for attack. It's a really big opportunity for people to try and steal your personal information, steal your credit card, whatever it may be. And web browsers have been something that's been under just grave attack. This is a study that the Washington Post did. And basically what they did is they said, if you were running Internet Explorer or any browser built on top of Internet Explorer, such as Marathon, for 284 days last year, 284 days of 2006, you are at risk to what's called a critical security vulnerability. And what this means, a critical security vulnerability is a remote code exploit. It means by simply browsing to a website, someone could install software without your knowledge, install spyware, install a virus, a Trojan, have that software persistently run on your machine without any knowledge, no pop-ups, nothing happening. These are things that were publicly known bugs that Microsoft knew about, the whole world knew about, but yet there wasn't a patch available. In the same time period, Firefox had about 9 days of risk. That number is about 9 days longer than we'd want it to be, but is obviously much, much better than Internet Explorer. And I think part of the reason for that is because Firefox is open source. We get help from people all over the planet, people looking at security bugs, people responding all around the world to find and fix these things. And it's one of the reasons why Firefox has become so popular. And then, of course, add-ons. How many of you here use some form of add-ons extension? Okay, pretty good number. So the key thing for me about add-ons is they really allow us to keep Firefox true to its mission. So the challenge with any software product is as you keep going to new versions, you go to 3.0 and 4.0, everyone's always trying to figure out what are the new features you can add to excite people to do it. And one of the things we really try to be careful about with Firefox is make sure we don't jam-pack it with so many features that it becomes bloated and slow and buggy. And add-ons are really our relief valve for that. Because if we don't think a feature is really usable by 80–90% of the people who use the browser, we say you can just do that in an add-on. We don't have to jam it in there. And I think it's one of the key ways we're able to keep Firefox as slim and trim and easy to use as it is. So that's kind of a quick introduction to Mozilla and Firefox. So what I want to talk now is actually about how Firefox development works. So in the world of open source, there's lots of different people. This is me. I help to manage a team of people who are the core Firefox development team. So these are people who are working full-time to work on Firefox. And there's about 40 of them, a little under, who write code in some form or the other to work on the Firefox project. But again, like me, they're a very small part of this project. On any given day, there's several hundred people who are checking code into the CVS repository. So these are people who are making changes to the Mozilla platform or to Firefox or Thunderbird or any one of these other things. As you can see, that number already dwarfs the number of people who are paid to work on this, of course. For any particular release, there are thousands of people who contribute code. So for example, for Firefox 2, we estimated about 1,600 different people wrote code that was delivered into the final browser. So 1,600 people contributing code with just a handful of people working on it full time. But as I said in the panel earlier, it's not just about writing code, it's about testing code. It's about making sure that the product you build is a really great, high-quality product. So on any given day, there's about 10,000 people running what we call the nightly or trunk builds. So this is just the build right off the tinderbox of whatever the developers checked in yesterday. Hasn't been tested, hasn't been certified, you don't know whether it's going to work. And this is actually critical to both Firefox and pretty much every other open source project because it really allows us to get very rapid feedback. So as soon as we check in a new feature, as soon as we try something out new, the very next day we'll get feedback. Some of it positive, other not at times. And then when we go into a beta release, we do a beta release of Firefox. We don't think it's successful unless it's about 500,000 people using it. So often a couple 100,000, in many cases 500,000. Then of course I said earlier, there's about 100 million people using the product. So if you kind of try and find the dots that I showed earlier in this slide, way up in the upper left-hand corner, you can kind of get a sense of the scope and scale of building a product like Firefox. It's really an onion of people participating and getting involved in such wide numbers to make it possible. And as I said before, about 37%, about 1,600 code contributors worked on the code that was delivered in Firefox 2 last year. So of course the question becomes, if you've got 1,600 people writing code that aren't under any kind of official organization, they're just, many of them I don't know where they live, I don't know what they look like, I may just know their email address and the code that they've written. How in the world do you turn that into a product that is something that my grandmother or my mother or dad would want to use and be comfortable with using and was enough quality? So I think it starts with chaos. So this is the top 30 bugs as of Tuesday night. So if you have ever gone to bugzilla.mozilla.org, it is our bug tracking system. It's open to the public. Anyone can come in with just an email address, register an account, and start getting involved in the building of Firefox and all the other Mozilla products. So you can see there's lots of bugs here. These are things that people have recently filed or commented on or wanted to get fixed. And the key thing here is that there's a surprising amount of noise, right? There's a lot of duplicate bugs filed. As soon as we introduce a bug, we'll normally get a dozen or 2 dozen of the same exact bug filed by different people. So it takes time and effort to cull those down and to figure out what's going on. But there's a surprisingly little amount of vandalism. Again, it doesn't take any kind of registration or authority. You can just come in and sign up. But most people who do so obviously do so trying to help in some way or the other. Besides signing up, you can participate. So anyone can log in, follow a bug, and add their own comments and thoughts. You can say, I think this bug sucks and should be fixed right away. I think you should fix it in the next dot release. Or I think your proposed implementation is not what I want. Or I really like this feature and I really wish you would work on it and get it done. So this is something that, again, anyone in the world can come in, jump in on a conversation. And this is also a living record of all the decisions the developers have made. So you can go back into the bug system and look, when they were first implementing a feature 9 years ago, what were they thinking about and what kind of problems did they run into? So there's a great archaeology of what decisions were made to build the final product. And besides commenting and saying, this is what you think should happen, you can do, which means you can commit code. Again, all it requires is an email address to get a Bugzilla account, and then you too can go ahead and submit a patch. You can say, not only do I think you should fix this bug, here's a proposed solution, right? And all that requires is you to upload a patched file that's created from CVS, so you need CVS. It's often zipped up, so you need zip. All tools that are readily available. So this is the basics, right? So as I said before, hundreds of thousands or thousands of participants getting together on a basically totally open system where anyone can contribute, anyone can make comments, anyone can contribute code. And this is how we turn it into a product that everyone in the world would want to use. So just because there's 1,600 contributors and 10,000 nightly testers doesn't mean that every one of them gets to just commit whatever they want into the source control system. At the heart of every open source project, there's some kind of strong leadership structure. So this is a system in place to make sure that only the people who know how to make the right decisions are able to choose what code goes into the system or not. So in the Mozilla project, we have a notion of module owners. So there's an area owner for each area of the code, and they're the expert in that area. So you have an expert in the area of networking, an expert in the area of UI, and they're the ones who are going to decide whether a particular code can get in. So we like to think of this as a strong leadership structure. This is, I don't know if anyone here watches South Park. This is a dead-on representation of the leader of the Firefox project, Mike Connor. This is about what he looks like. So Mike is the one that makes the final call on whether your code can get into the next version of Firefox and whether it can be checked in. So, the order starts with making sure that there's the right technical leaders in place. And that process has nothing to do with where you live, where you come from, what your education is, anything about your background. The way that you get to be a leader in the project is by doing. By contributing, by making good code, making good decisions, and the other people in the project saying, hey, this person's doing some great work, why don't you take over in this area? So we've got people who were in high school, we have people who used to bake donuts, we have people who were church organists. These are not people who necessarily had to go to the great universities, but they had the skills to get it done and got involved and started participating. And because they could do great work, they got involved and got the authority to make the decisions. So let's walk through, if I want to get some code into the next release of Firefox, let me kind of take you through a little bit of all the steps at kind of an abstracted level of what you want to do. So the first thing you got to do is, as I said, you want to submit a patch. So you want to go into Bugzilla, you want to find a bug and say, you know what, I think that this is a possible solution to this piece of code. You go ahead and you submit the patch on there, and the first part of that process is you get a code review. So again, this module owner, so depending on which area of the code you submitted a patch to, the module owner will take a look at that code, they'll review it, they'll make sure it fits the style guidelines, they'll make sure that it does the right thing. Often you won't get it through in the first review. They'll usually give you feedback. Sometimes this will go on for 3 or 4, maybe 8 or 10 times. They'll review your code and decide that, okay, you can go ahead and have my approval. If you touch code in a core part of the system, so let's say you touch something that affects large parts of the Firefox system, you need more than just a single module reviews approval to check in. You need what we'll call super review approval. So this is someone who has even broader knowledge of the system, who's been with the project longer, who then can go ahead and say, yep, your code looks good, I give you super review approval. Once you get that, you have authorization to check into the trunk. So the trunk is the main CVS area that's the furthest out release we're going to do. It's kind of our integration point. And that's what I was talking about earlier, where you have 10,000 people a day using those new builds from the trunk every day. So you get your code, you put it in there, you get approval from the module owner, you then get approval from the super reviewer, then you can get it into the trunk. So now it's in the trunk, but the trunk isn't in a Firefox release for maybe a year or two, and you really want to get your bug fixed tomorrow. You want it in the next release of Firefox delivered out in just a couple of weeks. In order to do that, you're going to have to go through what's called the release team. So this is a small group of people, usually technical people in the project, who get together and they decide which code could go in the next release of Firefox. And in addition to the module review and super review owners, what they're trying to do is make sure the bug you're trying to fix is the right bug, that the code you're submitting is in fact safe enough for a dot release, and that they are ready to go at this point in time. If you do get that approval, you can then check into the release branch, and then your code will eventually show its way through into a dot release of Firefox. So again, it's a mass of people, a large number of people, who are then organized through a technical hierarchy that makes sure that each of the code that finally ends up in a Firefox release that goes out to people has gone through the right level of approval and scrutiny and review to make sure it's of suitable quality for everyone's desktop. The other thing we do is we have amazing visibility into everything that's happening in the project. So this is, I don't have a laser pointer, do I? This is and a little blurry, but this is tinderbox.mozilla.org. So this is a snapshot of where all the builds are of the latest version of Firefox. I think I took this earlier this week. So you can see all these green boxes here. These are builds. So this green means good. Green means this build succeeded. Red is bad, means the build failed. So someone checked something in. So the first part here is making sure we know who's doing what in the project. So right here is a column that you probably can't read. It's called guilty. So these are the people who are guilty or responsible if the build is broken. So if you check your code in and you break the build and it doesn't compile anymore, it'll not only be read, we'll be able to find out who you are very quickly. And you usually get an angry email or a conversation in IRC saying you broke the build, you have to fix it, or I'm going to back your code out and it's not going to go on the release. So this is a clear visibility into who's making changes in the project at any point in time. In addition to that, we need to know what your change is doing to the project. So okay, so you check some new code in, well what did that do for performance? Does it make Firefox start slower? Does it make it render pages slower? How does it work with the HTML apps? So this is our series of performance tests, and you probably can't read the numbers here, but every build that goes in, they're reading these different performance counters to see how these changes in the code affect the performance of Firefox. And if you've slowed Firefox down, again, there's someone in the project called a sheriff who's looking at the code on the trunk that day. They will tell you you need to back your code out because it's made Firefox slower and try again. In addition to performance, you have to worry about memory. So down here, you can't see the numbers, but this is measuring memory leaks. It's measuring whether your code has happened to introduce any leaks into the system. And then we also, of course, want to make sure it's correct. And so we have a series of automated regression tests. And so there's about 20, at this point, 24,000 regression tests. And what we've started to do is to integrate all of the test suites of all of the online applications and Ajax toolkits like Dojo and MokiKit, so that not only are we running Firefox through a set of regression tests, it's actually running through a series of real-world applications on every build to make sure something you changed did in fact break anything. So really it starts with this mass of people who want to participate. There's no barrier to entry. You can come in, just need an email, just need basic tools. But in order to actually get your code in, you need to make sure it's approved by the right people and has the right impact overall on Firefox. So that's the basics of how open source development works in Mozilla. Any questions there? Already have some. So I want to go on to some other topics, but I want to offline web applications. Someone's read my prezo already, didn't you? Support offline web app. Yes, the question is about offline web applications, and do I think that they are the next big thing? And I'm actually going to talk about that in a little bit. Already Firefox Alpha 3, Firefox 3 Alpha 3, which shipped in March, has preliminary support for offline web applications. And so this is the ability to take my email, my newsreader, my calendar, all of these web apps and run them when I don't have net connection. So I can compose emails, read them, I can do this on an airplane or somewhere where I don't have Wi-Fi access. I think it's one of the few things left on the web that you can't do that you can do on the desktop. So I'll actually talk a lot about that in just a little bit. Let me try some others here. Yes. The question is basically, only 1 out of 10 banks in China are Firefox compatible. Will we persuade the banks to take measures to change their website? That's where I need your help. So we will definitely try and contact people to let them know, but you can also do this too. It's one of the most effective ways is email your bank and tell them, I'm a customer, I'm trying to get onto your bank and you're not supporting Firefox. It's honestly one of the best ways to get it done, is to you as a real customer to help make sure that those sites support not just Firefox, but any browser. We'd like it, you know, if you want to use Safari, if you want to use something else, you should have your choice of browsers. The question is basically, Firefox can't show some pages correctly. Maybe it's because they are not standard HTML, but IE can do this. How can you solve it? Well, this has actually been a long-standing problem, and we're doing 2 things to work on it. The first is, with every release of Firefox, we try and do some things to, you know, IE does a lot of things that are non-standard specific. So we actually have put a lot of work into Firefox to support these non-standard things that IE does, to make it easier for websites that weren't programmed for Firefox to run. So that's one thing. We've done a lot of that already, and we continue to do it in every release. The other part is, again, where I need your help, which is you should really tell these websites that they're broken, and they should really support standard HTML and allow you to use, again, your choice of browser instead of just IE. You know, it's 5, 6, 7 years ago in the United States, this was also true. You went to many sites that were IE only. These days, we use Firefox every day, and I can't remember the last time I've encountered a site that didn't allow me to work in Firefox but did in IE. So it can change, and it has. It just requires people to be vigilant and talk to the sites and let them know. Yeah, the question was basically, you know, a question about is Firefox becoming complex and huge, and what are we doing about it? And that's a little bit what I talked before earlier. People actually are really careful about the features they add to Firefox. You know, there's a lot of stuff in extensions that aren't in Firefox. And extensions, again, are a way that we can avoid having to integrate all sorts of different things. And as I showed you here with performance and leaks, these are things that we check on every piece of code that goes into the product. So to give you an example, Session Restore for Firefox 2 was a feature that was available in about half a dozen different extensions. Right, code already available, but it took a team of 2 about 6 months to get it integrated into Firefox 2. And all they really did during that time was performance tune and make sure that it didn't add extra memory overhead. So I think there's a lot of time spent in making sure it's there. And a lot of the work we're doing in Firefox 3 is actually to touch core parts of the platform that will slim it down, improve memory usage, and improve performance. So you should see a lot of improvements when Firefox 3 comes out. So I'm going to go on a little bit and then we'll do another series of questions. So how many of you here are web developers? Yes?
This question is about software engineering.
Yes.
I wish to know which kind of people could be code reviewer of Mozilla or Firefox, and must they be your employee of your company?
Not at all. Not at all. To give you a sense, I'm not a code reviewer. So I don't have permission to review code because
I want to know the standard of to be a code reviewer.
So the way you are a code reviewer is that you start contributing in the code. So all of the code reviewers today are people who started contributing code, writing code in that area. And so what happens is you get the attention of the current code reviewer, right, who notices the work you're doing, thinks that it's high quality work, and eventually at some point in the future may ask you to step up and also be a code reviewer. So you're effectively nominated by the previous person who's in the code there doing the technical work. And it has no relationship to who you work for or where you are or your background or anything like that. And that's really one of the beauties of open source. It's all about the work you do. Nothing else really matters. If you do high quality technical work and it's appreciated by other people who are doing technical work, then you'll get promoted and run up through the process. There's another quick question over here.
Yeah, I have a question. What kind of knowledge and skill do we have to have before we considering to commit code, contribute code to Firefox? That the knowledge of XPCOM is necessary, because I think it's a copy of Microsoft COM, and now it's painful to understand and use?
Yeah, so the question was, what technology do you need to know to contribute? And the answer is it depends on where you're going to contribute. So, for example, most of the front-end features of Firefox, most of the user interface is built on top of JavaScript, right? So you need to know JavaScript and basic web technologies like CSS and HTML. And it doesn't necessarily require a deep knowledge of XPCOM because that is hidden a little bit from you on the JavaScript side. If you want to contribute to the core platform, like the layout engine or the JavaScript engine or the networking libraries, things like that, that code is all in C++ and does make use of XPCOM. So I think the first basics you need is you need to know C++ if you're going to contribute there. You can learn XPCOM. There's no magic to it. Everyone who works on Mozilla now learned it, and they didn't, it's not something that's taught in schools. So you just need to kind of get started, but have some basics in writing C and C++ programming. There's plenty of other people who got involved and self-taught themselves C++ as well. Right? They started, they maybe worked on the front end, they maybe did some QA, and they just looked at other people's code and taught themselves how to program C++. So you don't necessarily need to have the background in education as long as you kind of get involved and get started. So one other question and I'll keep going. Yeah?
Okay, I have a question. When we use Firefox to browse the internet and when we open up many windows at the same time and the speed will become slow, and this phenomenon also happens when we use some browsers that is integrated with IE core. So can you give an explanation of this phenomenon?
Yeah, well, the question was on memory usage when you're opening lots of tabs and lots of windows. I think there's a couple of things going on. The first you have to remember is the complexity of the applications you're running in these tabs are increasing, right? Gmail and Google Maps is a lot more complicated than web pages of 10 years ago, right? So it's a full application that's running in that space. So, the web content that's running on there can impact, memory usage. So that's one big thing. The other thing is, we're continually looking at ways to reduce memory footprint for the browser to make it slimmer and trimmer. We're doing a lot of that in Firefox 3. We added a new technology called the cycle collector, which allows us to do better collection of memory inside it and allow you to hopefully use less memory as you're using the product. But it's a complicated problem because the things you're using the browser for are getting increasingly complex. So you should expect that it will use some reasonable amount of memory since you're running a full mail client and a full calendaring client and many other things in the browser. So let me move on. There'll be plenty of time for questions. Are many of you here web developers? Do you write web applications? Web development? A few? Okay. So let me just touch on a couple of things. Firefox, if you wander around Silicon Valley and you go to all the web startups and even the big web companies and talk to the folks here at Google, most of the people who develop web applications use Firefox. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the first is that there's a large number of great development tools out there that work with Firefox that makes web development very easy and very fun. I think the other cool thing about Firefox is if you develop for Firefox and develop on Firefox, you're first guaranteed that your app will run anywhere Firefox does. So Mac, Windows, Linux, Amiga, BOS, pretty much every operating system on the planet. And it's very likely that your app is going to run in any other standards compliant browser. Most apps written in Firefox will run on Safari or Opera or any of the other choices there, or only require small tweaks to do so. So it's a standard way to build your application. So some of the great tools for Firefox, so I'll just show a couple of screenshots of some of these. This really uses the add-ons part of Firefox to make web development really easy. So there's DOM Inspector, Firebug, Optana, and the web development toolbar. Let me show you a couple of these. So this is Firebug. Firebug is a plugin for Firefox. It's an add-on. And what it is basically is a full debugger for web applications. So I'll show you a couple shots here. I've got a very, very, very simple web page up here that's not rendering correctly. I'm trying to figure out why effectively this green box isn't covering the entire body of text down there, right? It should, it actually is an IE and it's not in Firefox. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. Normally what you do is if you're doing this by hand, you just start tweaking things. You look at the CSS, you change it, you reload the page, you kind of play around until it does what you think it does. In Firebug, what you can do is you can, in real time, go ahead and edit these things. So I'm looking at the CSS for this page here in Firebug. You see this little X down here, it's probably hard to see from the back. What I can do is I can interactively turn off CSS for each of these different things. So I can turn off the height and see what impact that has on my web page. I can also debug the app and put breakpoints in there and stop through it, just like you would in developing any Java or C++ app, but works on the web. You can also do things like, so this is me loading the Mozilla China page into Firefox. And this is Firebug on the bottom here. And what it's doing is it's showing me how long it took to load each of the parts of my web page. So as you know, web pages are CSS, it's HTML, you often are referring to external JavaScript, lots and lots of images. And you want to know, how long does it take this page to load? Does it take a long time, and why does it take a long time? So I can see a timeline of exactly how big each of the pieces of my page are, exactly when they rendered, and how long it took to load the total page. So I can use this, for example, to optimize, to maybe realize that I didn't need this piece of JavaScript for this page, or I wanted to shrink the image size down to make my page load faster, which will make people enjoy it more. So it's a great tool for debugging your applications and making sure they're fast on the web. So this is Firebug. It's just one of probably several dozen add-ons that are available for Firefox that make web development much easier. Going in a different direction, the amazing thing about open source is that people can take it and do unexpected things with it. So there's a small startup in Silicon Valley called Optana. What they've done is they've taken Eclipse. Eclipse is a Java-based IDE framework, effectively, and they've integrated it with Firefox and with Firebug, which I just showed you, to build a full web development framework. So this is a full IDE that allows me to edit my source code. I've got a page here and I'm writing some JavaScript. I can browse my page in the upper right there and look at the different elements that make up HTML. The amazing thing about this is, for most people doing web development today, they usually do it in a text editor without a lot of help. Well, this gives me everything I'd expect, which is tab auto-completion here. So I'm typing add event listener, and it's giving me a set of options as to what I'm trying to type in. Not only does it tell me what the possible options are, you can see the icons there, the little blue E in Firefox. It's telling me whether this particular piece of JavaScript or this part of the DOM is in fact supported in IE or Firefox. And it's giving me pop-up help, letting me know what that function does and what parameters it may take. So it gives me autocomplete, integrated help, lets me browse, lets me debug, and because it has an integrated version of Firefox in there, I can just flip to my preview pane, look at my application within Firefox, and see whether it's rendering properly, and then deploy it. So this again is an open tool. It uses Eclipse, which is also open source, and integrates Firefox. It can really only do so because they have source code to both. So they take, and Firebug as well, which is also open source. So they take these different open source tools and they meld them together into a full open source web development framework that makes it easy for you to build web applications. So that's a kind of snippet of some of the things that people use Firefox for in developing web applications. I want to talk a little bit about what's next now, and then we'll go there. So if you're developing on the web today, you use JavaScript. JavaScript is probably one of the most widely used languages on the planet. If you talk to our CTO, Brendan Eich, who is the original author of JavaScript, he'll describe it as a late-night hack gone wrong. It took off in popularity and gone way beyond, I think, what originally it was capable of. And so what's happening now is a new revision of the JavaScript language. So this is called JavaScript 2, and it's a major improvement to the basic JavaScript language, the basic language used on the internet to build web applications. I think when people talk to us about this, the most common question they get is, why in the world are we changing JavaScript? And I think the big thing here is, it's really about making programming in the large work really well. So you've got all of the web applications you have today, Gmail, Google Maps, Yahoo Mail, all of these things. Take really hard engineering to get them done because they're really pushing JavaScript, the language, and the platform to the limits. And so what we're trying to do is to add features into JavaScript which make it easier for people to build web applications. So things like a type system. JavaScript right now is a dynamic language without types. Types are really good because they allow you to check for errors at compile time, to make sure that the parameters I'm sending to a function are in fact the types that I think they should be, and determining that before I run the program. Also, different ways of organizing code that I'll show you in a minute that makes it possible for you to build very big applications. And of course, you're about to hear a talk about Python, and when you watch that talk, I hope he's going to go into some of the features of the language because we stole many of them for JavaScript too. So, shamelessly, I should say. But if you've used Python and you've gotten used to things like iterators and generators, Destructuring assignment is a way for you easily, for example, to swap variables without a temp or to get multiple return values from a function. These are all little things that make programming a lot more fun. They make it a lot easier. They make it easier for you to build large and big applications. And so we're stealing them shamelessly and putting them into JavaScript too. To give you a sense of some of them, if you programmed in JavaScript today, you'll notice that it's a prototype-based inheritance language. So it doesn't have the standard class-based inheritance that you see in many other languages that people program in today. So one of the things that's being introduced in JavaScript 2 is the addition, in addition to the prototype-based inheritance, of a class-based system. So a class is basically a way to encapsulate a series of methods, maybe their implementation, and maybe some data. And of course, you can extend other classes to inherit parts of their implementation and their signatures. So you can do this within JavaScript 2 and then create new objects. You can also build interfaces, which are very much like Java interfaces, if you've done any programming in Java, that allow you to declare method signatures, no implementation, but just this is the contract between my program and yours. And you can also use packages, and these are ways for you to organize your code into different modules that are then easy to recompose. And so this is really important for people sharing code across the net. You want to build a JavaScript library, stick it out there, make sure that I can use it and not have any collisions between the names you've chosen for your functions and the names that I'm using here. And again, this looks very much like Java packages. If you use Java, you can import an entire set of packages with a star or specifically name something now. So that's a really, really small touch dab into JavaScript 2, but that's coming very soon now. It is in the standards body, so it's going to be a standardized version of the language. It's actually the 4th revision of the JavaScript language. ECMAScript version 4 is the official name. They're working on this standard right now, and we're expecting it to be standardized by the end of the year. And then you'll see it in products, if not next year, the year after. Then someone asked about offline applications. So I want to talk a little bit about offline. We've already done 3 things in Firefox. So in Firefox 3 right now, in the alpha builds that you can get on the download pages, we've implemented 3 basic pieces of offline. So if I want to take my web application offline, there's really 3 things I need to do. I need to be able to store data offline. I need to be able to take my emails and put them on my local disk, or take my calendar information and store it on the local disk so I can get access to it even though I don't have access to the network. I need to be able to have code run offline, so my JavaScript and HTML and the different ways I build my application, I need to make sure that's available offline. And then I need to know when I'm offline and when I'm not, so I can do things differently. So we've taken all 3 of these things and added them in to Firefox 3. It allows you basically to have a local hash table that you can use to store data offline. It allows you to decide which parts of your web page you want to make sure are pinned in the cache and are available offline. And then also let you know through a DOM event whether you in fact are online or offline. So we've already built a couple demo applications of this, and this will ship for sure in Firefox 3. And I think it is, as we said earlier, one of the big barriers to web applications because you can't use them when the web isn't available or when the net isn't available. I think the other big area of research for us in trying to figure out what to do next with the web is something called microformats. Really, the concept of microformats is simple. There's a lot of unstructured data on the web that requires me to do a lot of work to do something interesting, right? So I'm looking for a restaurant, and I want to call that restaurant to make reservations or to find out if they're still open. What I have to do today is look on the web page, read it, find the number myself, type it into a phone, or cut and paste it into something else, right? I can't add it to my address book. I have to do everything by hand. The idea of microformats is to put small parts of structure around your data. So for example, the idea of an address would become a structured type, something that the browser would directly recognize and say, hey, there's an address on this page. Would you like to add it to your address book? Would you like to dial it from Skype? Would you like to save it later for some other use? So the basic idea is making some structure out of the data for things like addresses, for calendars, other things that you browse around on the net, mostly because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to cut and paste this stuff all the time. And so this makes it really easy for me to get what I want on the web. So to kind of sum up, what we're really trying to do with the future versions of Firefox on the web is make it possible to build web applications that you can't even conceive of today. To make large teams of programmers able to build big dynamic web applications very productively, to make it fun for them to do that so that they don't have to struggle through strange and obscure concepts, and to make sure that there's nothing you can't do on the web that you can currently do on your desktop today. So that's basically what we're trying to do with future versions of Firefox. And I think the proof is in the fact that aliens have already visited Earth and decided that they like Firefox. So this is a crop circle in Oregon in the United States. Actually, if you browse on Google Maps to the particular part on here, you can get photographic evidence that this exists. But this was done by a series of over-enthusiastic college students. I thought they were insane when they proposed the idea. They said that we'll just make a crop circle. And they convinced a farmer to destroy part of his field in order to make this crop circle. And they ran out there with string and sticks and wire and just literally hacked down wheat themselves so they could get what looks like a Firefox. So, that's about it. Questions?
Yeah.
Other questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
So the microformat has something to do with so-called semantic web.
Semantic web is, yeah, the concept of the semantic web is to make the web understandable by computers and reasonable. You're able to reason on the web. I think there's a slight difference between microformats and the semantic web, which is microformats are meant to be a small evolution of the web, so taking what's there and adding a little bit of structure. I think a lot of the focus on semantic web is trying to restructure the entire web, which I think is a hard problem that will take many, many, many decades possibly to get done. So I think microformats is something we're trying to make available, today or this year.
I have a problem. When Microsoft Internet Explorer updated to version 7, they fix out lots of CSS render bug.
Right.
But the same CSS hack we running in version 6 and 7, they also can pass in there. So when this we must make a new set to change lots of CSS code, or maybe we must change the struct. They make lots of trouble. So when Firefox update, does the developers think about this?
Yes, we think very much about this. So it's a really hard problem. If I can summarize your question, it's that IE7 broke a lot of existing websites because they changed the way it works with CSS. And I think we try very hard to do two things. One is to support the standards. So there's a test called ACID2, which is a CSS conformance test. The latest version of Firefox completely passes this test. But we try really hard to make sure we have backwards compatibility so we don't break existing websites. That's one of the reasons I talked about earlier. What we've done is we've taken lots of tests from existing web applications and from JavaScript suites and integrated them into our test process so we can see what's there. It's also one of the most powerful things about our testing community, why we do 10,000 people running it a day, is if we break a website that people use, we're going to hear about it right away. We'll hear about it the day after we check the code in. Right? For Microsoft, they may take months before they ever get that code out in the public and anyone sees it. For us, if we broke some obscure website, in some small country, we will hear about it literally the next day. And that's something we will take seriously and then fix. So I think that's something you can only do with this many people participating. So let me try a couple of the written questions. Okay. I can hear you.
It's a many discussion about the Mozilla platform recently. I noticed the foundation will put more resources about the it's your random project. That's great, I think. But I think it's not enough. I had involved some project about related to Mozilla. For example, I want to write a backend server, but I want to use the Mozilla XPCOM infrastructure, the component based. But it's hard to build the XPCOM standalone. So my question is, does the foundation have some plan about release a standalone XPCOM component?
Okay. I don't think we have current plans to release a standalone XPCOM component. You're talking about just XPCOM, just the XPCOM layer itself?
For my understanding,
yeah.
from the technical view, the XCOM is a core of the browser.
Yeah.
But for the project view, I think the XCOM is like a side effect of the browser.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we the focus of the foundation at this point, you know, a lot of the energy. So there's always more we could be doing, right? And there's any number of things that I wish we could do a lot more of. We do put a lot of energy in the platform, and the focus of the platform is really to support the applications that are out there today, things like Thunderbird, and Firefox, and other things. So, but yeah, let me get to some of these questions. So, okay, easy question. The question was about Debian and Iceweasel. If people here familiar with this, they changed from Firefox to Iceweasel, and the question was, why did this happen? And I think this is it's a kind of complicated issue, and it really boils down to the concept of trademarks. So, you know, the Firefox logo is a, you know, under US law, a trademark, which is something that we own, that people can use only under permission. And that's important for a consumer product, because it means that if you see that logo, you have some idea of what you have. And this isn't a theoretical problem. There's plenty of people out there that we've had to chase down who are selling Firefox, even though it's free. So they charge you to download and install Firefox, right? Or they try and build another program that's spyware that has the Firefox logo on that. And the legal way we can stop them from doing that is by trademark violation. We can tell them they're misusing the trademark. So this is really a conflict between opinions on trademark law and open source. Debian wanted to build a product with the Firefox logo on the source base and give anyone the right to change it and reuse it for any purpose necessary. And unfortunately, that's just not compatible with our ability to protect, to make sure that when you see the Firefox logo, it is what you think it is. Now, this doesn't mean that they can't take the entire code base and build another product, which is exactly what they did. So they can take the entire code base that is Firefox and build Iceweasel, you know, which is a similar product. And we actually make that easy. We specifically made it easy for you to strip out the Firefox branding, so that if that's what you want to do, you can. So it's an unfortunate situation, but it's just a difference in kind of approaches on how we're doing these things. And I think it's something that open source in general is grappling with. You know, we've worked very well with Ubuntu and Red Hat and various others, so you'll see branded Firefox versions on there. And I think it's important, actually, for the success of open source in the consumer world to have a strong kind of central brand presence, so that it's something that people know what it is and that they can trust. So, let's see. So the question's about Bugzilla. Is it a successful product as a common bug tracking tool? Do you think about switching to something more common like Track or I think SourceForge is what you're saying there. You know, I don't know of any good statistics on what's popular in terms of bug tracking tools. Bugzilla, I mean, obviously Bugzilla is what we've been using for 8 or 9 or 10 years. You know, there's a little over 370,000 bugs in Bugzilla right now and a couple 100,000 user accounts. So we're certainly not going to switch anytime soon. There are lots of big people who use Bugzilla, but there are plenty of other bug tracking systems out there. So I think, you know, it's kind of like we said earlier, use whatever tool works best for you. Bugzilla works great for us, and if you want to use something else, that's great too. Let me get to, let's see, Firefox extension complex development is complex, and extensions are hard to bug. Yeah, do you have any plans to make it easier? We do, actually. We're working on it. So the question is, can you make Firefox extension development easier? There's actually a project right now called Fuel, F-E-U-L, which is, the concept there is to try and take the most common things you do in an extension, you know, accessing certain elements of the DOM, opening files, getting to the bookmarks, for example, and put them into a core library so that it's much quicker for you to develop. So that's already actually out there. It's at .3, I think. If you type, you know, Mozilla Fuel into Google, you'll find it. And we're actually going to integrate that into a future version of Firefox to make it easier for extensions. We're also, in Firefox 3, we're rewriting the entire bookmark system primarily to make it easier for you to build new extensions on top of the bookmark system. The existing one is very hard to work with because of some of the internals, and much of that has been improved specifically to allow extensions to be developed. So, the question is about Tamarin. So Tamarin is a code donation from Adobe. Tamarin is the name of a new project. What Adobe did is they took part of the Flash player and open sourced it, and this part is a just-in-time compiler. It's a VM for running JavaScript code. They took that and they donated it to the Mozilla project, and it's under the code name Tamarind. And we're going to integrate that in a future version of Firefox. And what that means for you, actually, is mostly amazing JavaScript performance. So extremely high-performance JavaScript within the browser uses a just-in-time compiler, like some of the Java VMs do and other VMs out there, and maybe other languages besides JavaScript. So that's the plan for Tamarind in the future. Let's see. This is a good question. How do you, Mozilla Corporation, treat the relationship between your employees and those part-time contributors? How do you make them respect each other and avoid flamings? So I think the first thing is that we treat employees just like anyone else in the project. So it's a really interesting thing. If you join Mozilla, but you've never contributed, join Mozilla Corporation and employ there full-time, but you've never contributed code to the project, you don't get any special privileges. So you don't get review access, you don't get commit access. You look just like anyone else in the community. You might be spending more time on it, but you get no special privilege or difference because you're an employee and you're a community member. It also means that all of the discussions and meetings and everything are all open. So we do weekly meetings where there's a 1-800 phone number that anyone in the world can dial into, and a wiki page and an IRC channel, and we do everything in the news groups. So the key thing, I think, is to make sure that there's really no difference between how someone who's working full-time and someone who may be volunteering part-time are treated in the project. And that's the most important thing. Let's see. Next question. Yeah.
We are running out of time, so that's the last question.
Let's do. I have one question, so if you can get your question in, you can be the last question.
I have an answer. About now the code base is very large. Does the foundation have some plan to split the whole large code base to several smaller split projects? Does the project have their own release cycle, like the X organization did?
Okay. Yeah. There's not a plan to break it into pieces that are released on different schedules, but the code is very big, but it's actually, if you remember the first diagram I showed,
I think this will make the interface more generic and clear,
yeah,
and easy to understand and maintain this.
Yeah, it is very big, but it is also very modular. So there are many components and many different people who are experts in those different areas. So I don't think there's a current plan to completely separate the components and make them on their own release schedule. Right now, it's built as one kind of monolithic thing, and I think that's actually been a big advantage to getting that done. I'm going to grab this one too, just to make sure, since we're running out of time. Let's see. Fake official, cheat users. Easy question for the last one. So the question was basically Google AdSense has a promotion of Firefox which pays $1 per installation, but some folks made fake sites to download Firefox, and they made viruses to make malware instead of downloading Firefox. What do you think of this and how to solve it? I mentioned this earlier. This is actually a big problem. This is why kind of the brand and the trademark really matters, which is that's not the only case where someone has either charged someone money for what is free software. I can't tell you how many personal phone calls I've picked up in the office where some poor person paid $30 for Firefox and was very upset and wanted to return it. And I was trying to explain to them that I can't give them their money back because they didn't give me their money because they bought a piece of free software. And that's some shady person in the middle trying to take advantage of people doing it. So there's other variants of that where people are using the logo on fake sites and downloading viruses and spyware and that sort of thing. I think this is another area where we need help. If we know about these things, we'll try and shut them down whenever we can. So if you see stuff like that, you should let us know or let someone know, and we can try our best to use either persuasion and shame or legal means to try and get them to shut down. But it's important to make sure people aren't getting malware with a logo on it. So, okay, thanks a lot.